Love is in the air, or at least it is in my neck of the woods. I'm Leslie Dories, your marriage coach, and pretty much every young person in my neighborhood who I watched grow up has or is about to get married. My daughter got married about 5.5 years ago, and the boys in the neighborhood are following suit this year. So why what is it that they need to know, right? One of the things that is a fallacy is that marriage doesn't really change anything. Now, each of these couples, with the possible exception of one, and I'm not sure about that, is already living together or lived together before they got married. And there's this idea that marriage just doesn't change anything. And if you have that mindset, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because the truth is, every decision either one of you makes directly or indirectly impacts the other person. And there may be decisions, behaviors, habits that are already established in a relationship before you get married that people think is not going to impact what happens once they're married. And I'm going to tell you that is not true, because before you're married, you are legally separate entities. What you do is separate, right? If you spend your salary in this way, it doesn't have any impact on the person directly. And a lot of couples decide that they're going to split their finances, which makes sense when you're single, but it may be problematic once you become married. And that's just one of the areas. Another of the areas is how you spend your time. And these are conversations that, especially if you already have established habits, they don't necessarily seem like that big of a deal. But they are. And what happens is if you stay in this independent mindset, then you guys are going to do this. If you adopt an interdependent, mind you, not dependent, but an interdependent mindset, which actually is what marriage is, then you have a chance at success. There's something called the policy of joint agreement that I was exposed to many, many years ago. And the idea behind this policy is that you don't do anything unless both of you are on board with it. Another way of thinking about this is it takes two yeses, but only one no. If one of you is not on board with something, you need to stop and negotiate through it. And the first time I was exposed to this, I thought, well, this is great in theory, but then I'm going, how do you make it work? And my husband and I were actually on a drive home when I finished this book, or when I had this epiphany, I should say, about 2/3 of the way through the book. And I scared the crap out of him because I went, oh, and he thought something was wrong. No, I just had the idea of this policy works because you set your relationship up that way. You set your relationship up that you're not going to take an action unless both of you are in agreement. And I struggled with this for a while because I'm thinking, well, what if somebody loses their job, or these other things, right? And all of a sudden it was like, no, you set it up this way. I was speaking to a client just the other day, and his wife is harboring some serious resentments. And one of the resentments that she's harboring is that they moved. Now, I'm sure they had a conversation about it, but apparently there were some issues that were not resolved with her. And, I had the same experience early on in my marriage with my husband. He finished his PhD. I was working towards mine. He got a job offer. We had to leave, and we talked about it. And I actually told him, it's fine. I'm okay not getting my PhD. And I've never regretted that decision, but we had that conversation. If we had just moved without having had that conversation, without dealing with my actually thinking about it and figuring out what it was I wanted to do, it could have turned out completely differently. And so this is what I would advise all of these young people who are about to embark on this new adventure, that this is the mindset that you really, really, really need to adopt. And there's some challenges to this mindset, because here's the thing: both of you have to be honest, and you have to be willing to deal with uncertainty, and you have to be willing to deal with disagreements. By the way, all hallmarks of what happens in a marriage. And so when you have this guidelines in place, when you've talked about these things, when you have decided together, right, that this is your pathway forward, then you minimize the chance of resentment. You increase the chance that you guys are working together as a team. And in my opinion, marriage is the ultimate team sport, and it sets you up for success. So if you have not already done this in your marriage, I'm going to tell you it's not too late, but this is where resentment takes root. And the one thing you do not want is resentment in your marriage. So if you'd like to know more about this, I invite you to get in touch with me, and we can talk about what's going on in your relationship. If you find this helpful, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. And until next week, stay loving.